right, so you're thinking about snagging that iPhone 16 Pro, but Pro or Pro Max?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
That price difference is no joke. So we got to figure out, is that Max really worth all the hype?
Right, because it's not just about the specs on paper. It's about how those differences actually play out in your everyday use.
Exactly. So we've been digging deep into reviews from TechRadar and Tom's Guide.
Plus Phone Arena spec breakdowns.
Oh, and of course those always passionate Reddit threads.
You gotta get that real user perspective.
Right. By the end of this deep dive, you'll know exactly why certain features matter.
Not just that they exist.
So you can choose the iPhone that truly fits your life.
Not just your budget.
Okay, so let's just get this out of the way. The elephant in the room size.
Obviously, the Max is bigger.
But Phone Arena specs show it's not just about how much screen you get.
The Pro Max is packing a 406.85 mAh battery.
Compared to the Pro's 3582 mAh.
That's a pretty significant
Does
difference.
that actually translate to longer battery life, though?
Oh, absolutely. Tom's Guide did battery tests, and the Pro Max lasted a ridiculous 18 hours.
Wow.
18 hours. The Pro wasn't bad at 14 hours.
Still pretty good.
But if you're a power user, someone who's always on the go,
Yeah.
those extra 4 hours on the Max can be a lifesaver.
Seriously. And Digital Trends mentioned something I hadn't even thought about. That bigger Max body actually helps with heat.
Keeping it cool.
Right.
Right.
Apparently the Pro can get kind of toasty when you're pushing it with like gaming or video recording.
Yeah, especially if you're doing it for a while.
So that extra space in the Max helps dissipate that heat,
Prevents it from overheating.
which can impact performance.
Absolutely. No one wants their phone to slow down in the middle of an intense gaming session.
Right, so size isn't just about looks.
It actually affects how the phone functions.
Now let's talk displays. Digital Trends said both Pros got bigger screens this year.
But the Max is now a whopping 6.9 inches.
6.9 inches.
That's bigger than the Galaxy S24 Ultra.
Crazy.
TechRadar raved about both displays, but that extra real estate on the Max? It's just so immersive for media, especially if you're watching videos or reading articles.
Or editing photos.
Exactly. It's like having a mini tablet in your pocket.
But can you even fit it in your pocket, though?
Yeah, that's the trade-off. If portability is key for you, the Pro might be the better choice.
But if you want that giant screen experience,
Then the Max is calling your name.
I got to mention that new camera control button that everyone's been talking about.
Yeah, TechRadar called it a game changer for photography.
Because it gives you more tactile control, right?
Exactly. You can launch the camera switch mode, zoom, all with a physical button.
No more fumbling around with a touch screen.
And what's really interesting is that an Applevis reviewer who's visually impaired said it has huge potential for accessibility,
Oh, wow.
especially as third-party apps start to integrate with it.
I hadn't even thought about that.
That tactile control could be a game changer for users with disabilities.
Now, on paper, both Pros have the same camera setup.
Same lenses, same sensors.
But Digital Trends noticed something interesting in their testing.
Remember that heat management we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, the Max's superior cooling actually allows you to record longer videos without the camera overheating and dropping frames.
Makes sense.
Plus, that larger body makes it a more comfortable viewfinder for those longer shooting sessions.
Okay, so size isn't just about how it looks and feels in your hand.
It can actually impact the functionality of the phone.
Now let's dive into performance. Both models have the A18 Pro chip.
So they're both blazing fast.
But could there be a difference in how they perform?
Well, Tom's Guide's benchmarks showed a slight edge to the Pro Max,
Interesting.
especially in graphics-heavy tests like gaming.
Hmm.
And Digital Trends suggested that the Max might be able to sustain that high performance for longer periods.
Again, probably because of that better cooling.
Yeah, it seems like the Max is better equipped to handle those more demanding tasks.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I got to mention something Digital Trends pointed out about the Pro Max.
Oh yeah, the storage situation.
Let's start at 256 GB.
There's no 128 GB option.
And that sparked some debate on Reddit.
Some users love it. They see it as future-proofing their device.
Right. You're less likely to run out of space down the line.
But others see it as a barrier to entry for budget-conscious buyers.
Because it pushes the starting price even higher.
Exactly. So that's something to consider depending on your storage needs and budget.
Okay, let's pause here for a moment. We'll be back soon to dig into Apple Intelligence and what real users are saying about these phones out in the wild.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, we've covered size, battery, and performance.
But now it's time to talk about the elephant in the room, Apple Intelligence.
Right. Everyone's talking about it.
But it's kind of mysterious, you know?
Yeah, because none of the features were active at launch.
So what do our sources actually say about how Apple Intelligence might work on these phones?
Well, that AppleVis review brought up a good point. They're excited about the potential, but
Yeah.
they really want Apple to get AI right.
Not just rush it out. And I think that's so important.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the hype, but AI has these huge implications.
For sure, like privacy and accessibility.
Even the potential for bias.
Absolutely. And that's why this gradual rollout could actually be a good thing, you know?
Yeah, gives Apple time to work out the kinks
Test, refine, address those concerns.
before they unleash the full power of Apple Intelligence on everyone.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about specs,
The numbers.
but what about the actual user experience?
Yeah.
How do these phones feel in your hand?
That's something you can't get from a spec sheet.
Exactly. And that's where those Reddit threads come in clutch.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see what people who are using these phones every day are saying.
One thing that stood out to me was how many people commented on the weight.
The size difference?
Yeah, a lot of people who upgraded from a smaller phone to the Pro Max were surprised by how heavy it felt.
It's definitely a two-handed phone for most people.
Whereas the people who went with the Pro, they really liked that one-handed usability.
All right, they talked about how much easier it was to hold.
Fit in your pocket.
Less likely to cause hand fatigue.
And that just reinforces that trade-off we were talking about,
Screen real estate and battery life versus
portability.
ease of use.
And there's no right or wrong answer. It all depends on your priorities.
Your lifestyle.
Okay, so let's dig a little deeper into those trade-offs, starting with battery life,
Yeah, because that's a big one.
especially for power users.
Nobody wants to be tethered to a charger all day.
And the Pro Max users on Reddit were raving about the battery life.
Oh yeah, like all day and a half without charging?
Incredible.
It's almost like having a laptop that can run for 36 hours.
Now, on the other hand, the Pro users, they were happy with the battery life.
But they definitely had to be more mindful of their usage.
Right. They talked about adjusting the brightness and managing background apps.
Being a bit more conservative to make it through the day.
Which brings us back to what we were saying earlier.
Yeah.
These phones are both incredibly capable, but,
They require different levels of engagement.
and that's not just about battery life either. It's about how they handle heat too,
Some Pro users did complain about the phone getting warm or even hot.
especially when they were gaming or recording video.
Right, whereas the Pro Max users seem to have a much smoother experience.
That larger body and more efficient cooling system really seems to make a difference.
It's amazing how those seemingly small differences can have such a big impact on the user experience.
Okay, so we've covered a lot in part 2,
Size, battery life,
user experiences.
even heat management.
But before we move on to part 3,
Yeah.
I want you to think about something. Think about your digital lifestyle.
How do you use your phone?
What are your biggest pain points with your current device?
The answers to those questions might just reveal which iPhone is right for you.
Yeah, because it's all about self-awareness and understanding what you need.
Exactly.
Okay, so welcome back to the final part of our iPhone 16 Pro deep dive. We've talked about size, battery performance.
Even those early thoughts on Apple Intelligence.
But now it's time to think about the long game.
Exactly. Because we're not just talking about these phones as they are today, but how they'll hold up over time.
Yeah, because let's be real, both of these phones are amazing right now. But technology moves so fast, so which one is going to age more gracefully?
That's where those little spec differences we talked about earlier, they can become really important down the road.
Like the extra RAM in the Pro Max.
Right. It might not seem like a big deal today, but
Yeah, in a couple of years, as apps get more demanding and those software updates start piling up.
that extra memory could make a real difference. The Max might still feel super snappy, while the Pro might start to feel a bit sluggish.
And that better cooling system in the Max could play a role too, right?
Definitely think about it. Processors are only going to get more powerful.
Which means more heat.
Exactly. And that Pro Max, with its bigger size and better heat dissipation,
Yeah.
it's just better equipped to handle that, so it could really help it maintain that performance edge over time.
So if you're the type of person who keeps their phone for 3 years or more,
Maybe even longer.
the Pro Max might be the smarter choice in the long run.
Potentially. Yeah. But it's not just about the hardware. Software updates play a big role in how a phone ages, too.
That's true. Apple is pretty good about supporting their older devices with software updates, but
Sometimes those updates can actually slow down older phones.
it's like they're trying to do too much.
Exactly. And that's where the Pro Max, with its more powerful processor and that extra RAM,
Yeah.
it might have an advantage. It's already starting from a higher baseline.
So even if those updates cause a little slowdown,
It should still feel pretty smooth and responsive.
okay, so we've covered the hardware, the software future-proofing, but there's one crucial piece of the puzzle we haven't really talked about.
The most important piece,
You.
the person buying the phone.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to what you need and want in a phone.
So if you're still on the fence after all this, here's what I recommend. Try to imagine yourself using each phone in your everyday life.
Picture yourself holding it, carrying it in your pocket, using it for the things you do most often.
Think about how it feels. Does it feel comfortable? Does it feel intuitive?
Does it make your life easier, or does it get in the way?
Sometimes your gut instinct is the best guide.
And remember, there's no wrong answer here.
Both of these phones are incredible pieces of technology.
The best iPhone is simply the one that best fits your needs and your lifestyle.
Well said.
So there you have it. We've explored the iPhone 16 Pro versus the Pro Max from every angle.
Specs, features,
User experiences, long-term implications.
all of it.
And hopefully you're leaving this deep dive feeling informed and ready to make the right decision for you.
Remember, this is an investment. Choose wisely. And may your next iPhone bring you years of joy, productivity, and maybe even a little bit of that Apple Intelligence magic.
And that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.